Hey, friends, and welcome to Sparks, a SoulFire series dedicated to showcasing leaders who inspire, ignite, and light the way for others. Each month, we highlight someone whose presence, wisdom, and work creates a ripple impact in their community. I'm your host, Alex Widener, and today I'm sitting down with our August Spark, Paul Kilsch. Paul is an experienced people leader, problem solver, and self-described Swiss Army knife, whose career has spanned more than 2 decades across creative work, strategy, operations, product management, and leadership. But when you talk to Paul about the impact he's most proud of, he doesn't start with projects, titles, or deadlines. He talks about people. Throughout his leadership journey, Paul has learned what it means to lead with empathy, build trust, have the hard conversations, and create space for others to discover their strengths and what they're capable of. In this conversation, you'll hear Paul's story, the experiences that shaped his people-first approach to leadership, and why he believes the relationships we build often matter far more than the projects we complete. We'll also talk about empathy and accountability, developing your own authentic leadership style, and why sometimes a little wisdom from A League of Their Own and Joe Dirt can go a surprisingly long way. So settle in, take a breath, and join us as we get to know our August Spark, Paul. Hi, Paul. How are you?
I'm good, Alex. How are you?
I'm good. Congratulations on being our August Spark.
Oh, I appreciate it. I'm definitely beyond honored and humbled.
Well, we love Paul. Paul has been a part of our collective pretty much from the beginning. And so we're just really grateful that you are here with us today, but also that you have been able to show us what leadership looks like in your way. And so I'm really excited about our conversation.
I am too. I am too.
Yeah. I want to start with something that you wrote about in the form, and that was a high school talent show. So you said your first real recognition of leadership happened during that talent show. So tell me that story.
Oh my gosh, so many years ago at this point. I think we all reflect on different moments in our life that kind of shaped us or molded us, or moments of clarity, if you will. And the one I was particularly sharing here was when I was a freshman in high school. You know, new in the school, we're at the bottom of the ladder, if you will, trying to figure out like what is this thing called high school. And my small rock band that I had, we were enrolled in a talent show at our high school. There's like a set of things that they're going to go through and the people that are participating and kind of an agenda or a schedule of events. And it just felt kind of chaotic. You had people that weren't really familiar with how to run the sound booth. You had people that weren't really familiar with how to run lights and curtains and those kinds of things. And so through different activities throughout my life, like within church growing up and things of that nature, I knew how to use some of the systems. I knew how to draw curtains. So it was very evident to me, like after the first or second act had come out, like it was really awkward. There were these really weird changes that were happening with the music and the audio, the curtains. Nobody knew how to close them, that kind of thing. So I'm back behind stage. I just remember like going over and being like, no, you have to basically unclip this latch and pull this up and remove this and then pull the lever. And that allows the curtains to be drawn back because they stay in a locked position in our auditorium. And so I started doing that. And the next thing I know, I'm borrowing a headset so I can talk to the people in the audio booth and telling them like, we've got a crazy echo and some other things happening. And so I guess the long and short of that was just at the end of our talent show, I remember Mrs. Woodruff. So she was our student council leader at the time, pulling me aside. And she was the one that was kind of helping and host this. And I just remember her being like, hey, really, thank you for stepping in and stepping up and helping show others how we had to do things, because you weren't afraid to get your hands dirty. You weren't afraid to jump in. You weren't afraid to teach. And you just weren't afraid of doing what needed to be done. I don't really remember it in that manner. I remember, I just wanted it to be a good professional looking show. We've got parents out in the audience and those kinds of things. But at the end of that conversation, she's like, have you ever thought about, getting involved with like, student council and the student council office? And I had been a member of student council kind of in middle school, but it doesn't have the impact that it does later on in kind of your pre-adult life, if you will. And I remember joining student council, and then next thing you know, right, that led to different roles within school organizations and things. And I remember that as a time where there was somebody in my life. I didn't have a relationship with that individual, but they recognized me from the outside and said, "I see you and I feel like you could bring something to the table. Would you be interested?" And opening up a door for me that I don't know if it would have been opened in a different manner, but it was definitely one of those moments in life that I'll remember for the rest of it, because somebody had faith in me, somebody put trust in me, and somebody took the time to come and acknowledge something that they felt like I had done good. We all enjoy being recognized, right, for giving something our
Yeah.
best or putting in our best effort, and that helps you build a reputation. It helps kind of build up people's confidence, and so to this day, right, I'll always remember that instance with Mrs. Woodruff and kind of the student council talent show that occurred my freshman year.
Okay. Well, I have a leadership related question, but before I get to that, I need to know, what was your role in this rock band?
So way back in the day, I used to play the drums. I don't play the drums very much anymore. I still have a drum set. It's actually way back in the corner back behind us. I don't get to play very much anymore, and I was never honestly that good at it. Trust me. But yeah, we had a small rock band, a three-piece rock band, and we played "Swallowed" by Bush. Short-lived
Okay.
but fun.
That is fun. Okay. Okay, now back to my leadership question.
Okay.
I was not expecting you to say rock band, so I was like, okay, yes, Paul. Okay, well, looking back, do you see something in that younger version of Paul that still kind of shows up in how you lead today?
Yeah, I do. And I would hope that anybody that I've had the opportunity of supporting and serving would say the same. But I don't feel I'm ever in a position or have ever been in a position where I'm not afraid to get my hands just as dirty as somebody else. I am a firm believer that a leader, obviously understanding the boundaries of, knowing when to delegate and when to choose to make sure you're not micromanaging and overstepping, but
Yeah.
I would never be afraid to step in and help and get into the trenches, if you will, and do something that I would expect somebody else to do. That's a perfect example. Somebody could have been back there and dictating and saying, "Hey, close the curtain, open the curtain, change this mix. Why does this sound awful?" And you can either take action or you can kind of just complain about it. And so, uh, I would like to believe that kind of those two things still live on today. Is I prefer not complain about something. I would like to be a problem solver, and I'd like to be able to figure it out, and sometimes that requires collaboration and some brainstorming with others, and recognizing you don't always have the best solution, somebody else might, and then again, not being afraid to get your hands dirty and do what needs to get done,
Yeah,
regardless of how large or small that task might be.
that's awesome. And I see that in you too. I see,
Well,
if
thanks.
someone needs something done, like, I know you'll just do it if it needs to be done. And so I think people appreciate that in a leader too, because you're right, like, micromanaging is hard. It's hard for the leader, but it's hard for the followers too, right?
On both sides, right? So, you've got a leader who is trying to delegate and teaching and training and motivating and mentoring. A lot of people, the best way that they learn is by doing and repetition. And as a leader, you have to figure out, right, where to draw the line on, I'm going to give this to somebody else. They may be doing it slower than I would to be able to get it done, but they're learning something along the way. And you're also exhibiting and showing confidence and instilling trust, which is, a big part of what I know we're going to talk about later on. But that goes a long way in building a person up and letting them show up as their true, authentic self every single time. And so it's just a really important part of the leader that I hope that I'm speaking of today.
So, one of the questions we ask all of our Sparks is, which of the SoulFire values do you resonate with most? And you did write authenticity. I believe you wrote compassion as well, but you just talked about being authentic. So, let's talk a little bit more about that. Why do those values resonate with you most?
Yeah, sure. I think that, and it goes back to kind of, empathy and compassion, they go hand in hand, right? It's understanding how to be compassionate in a given situation, being able to empathize with an individual situation and, or, maybe their skill set, where they've come from, what kind of work they've done in the past, the leaders that they've worked for, but being compassionate and being able to show up for that individual. It isn't always about showing up as, okay, I am your project manager, that I am your leader of said thing. You're showing up as a true, genuine individual, taking care of an individual, talking to them, kind of figuring out what makes them tick, etc. Because I think that we all have to be true to our authentic selves. And it's something that doesn't just happen overnight. We have different leaders and we have different people that come in and out of our life at different times. And I don't think that there's any one size fits all type of leadership. You have different leaders, some you really prefer, some that you don't necessarily prefer. You get along with some really well, you may butt heads with the others. But in all of those things, you've learned different pieces and components that I would say you add to your leadership toolkit. And it allows you to pull those things out whenever you need to, right? And what you're doing is you're not just picking an off the shelf version of leadership, and that is the copy paste version that everybody uses, and that's what's expected of you. You're actually creating one that resonates with who you are, your values, what interests you, what motivates you, who you want to show up for as a genuine person. And so that all rolls back up into, I know you and I had briefly talked at one point about brand and being authentic to your own brand. I will be one of the first to admit I am not the best leader at every single thing in the world, but I can definitely be a compassionate and I can be an empathetic leader and show up and listen and hear both sides of stories, understand kind of where an individual is coming from or their point of view, have compassion, especially when, they're going through a tough time and they just need somebody to lift them up and put some trust and faith in them. But all of these pieces and components from that toolkit, whatever you as an individual take and you meld those things together, that becomes your authentic 100% undiluted version of your brand. And that is how you are authentic to yourself and to the people that you either lead or the leaders that you serve.
Yeah. And I think if the leader is living in that authenticity and modeling that behavior, or it's not even behavior, just the way they show up, I think it's easier for people around them to start learning that as well.
100% agree. I think some leaders have a very specific way of how they want to lead people. You always used to joke back in the day around the type A personalities. It's this has to be done, then this has to be done. It has to be my way or the highway. And there's a lot of variety of that kind of leader now. But, if a leader creates the environment that they want to lead in, or they should, whether they know they are or not, it trickles down through their individual people, right? And I would bet anybody that is listening to this has had that conversation with a peer and been like, man, I can't believe I'm being asked to do this. This is not the way that I would have done it, or those kinds of things. And you've got to really be authentic to yourself and say, does this align with who I want to be, where I want to go, what I want to do? And you need to be empowered as a person and as an individual to be able to say, you know what, I have a better idea or a possible different way of approaching this, and have the courage. And you need to be able to be in an environment that allows you to stand up and raise your hand and not be afraid to say, hey, I was thinking about this on the drive in today. And what if we ... And a leader's responsibility is to create that environment that allows an individual to feel comfortable and safe to be able to do that. Now, there are some caveats to that. Time bound, time sensitive, right? Moments where decisions have to be made and it is not the proper time for that kind of pooling of ideas and kind of thing. A leader also has to recognize how to handle and diffuse that kind of situation as well. There's one of two ways that could be handled. Hey, I had this great idea coming in on the way to work today. What do you think about this? The leader can say, we don't have time for that. We have to get this done maybe next time, right? You've immediately just brushed off and you've created this wall of distrust with an individual, and they're not going to come back and probably offer an idea anytime soon.
Right.
The second way that an empathetic leader would approach that would be, I appreciate you bringing some ideas to the table, and I really want to encourage you to continue bringing these. I think we need to table that conversation for now, and we probably need to come back and evaluate it maybe later, because right now we do have this deadline and we do need to deliver against this, right? So there are different ways to be able to handle those kinds of conversation with grace. Both of them are going to get the same types of results in the end that you wanted. The project, the deadline, whatever, it's going to get hit, it's going to get done. But how a person walked away from that conversation and how they felt valued and how they felt about being involved with that decision, that is the crux of the type of leader that you want to be, and the type of environment that you want to create. So different ways of handling different situations, but doing it authentically and creating an environment of trust and safety for
Yeah.
an individual to feel valued.
Yeah. I'm glad you brought up psychological safety. We talked about that in an earlier episode this year and how key it is to organizations. Obviously, people want to feel psychologically safe to be able to share ideas in any environment they're in, but specifically work, because it does feel like a lot of times there is so many time-bound projects, so much pressure. Maybe your leader's under a lot of pressure. Maybe they're not leading the way they want to lead because of their leader or their leader. And so still figuring out a way how to safeguard your people from that pressure in a way that you can still get the project done on time. But you're right, the way you express that to them is so important, and that is so important for me as a follower. I never want somebody to feel like they don't hear me and they don't care. Every person, I think, wants to feel heard and seen in some capacity.
Completely agree, and I think you hit the nail on the head as it relates to, some of today's pressures, especially within like corporate environments and places that I've been, and some of the stories I've heard from people I've worked with, and there is a lack of that safety, I think, that exists in a lot of places because there is such a focus on getting the project across the line or meeting the deadline. And I get it. There's a lot of pressure out there today. Everybody is under a lot of stress. We're all trying to do the best that we possibly can. And I think that that's the part that gets lost sometimes in translation is if you don't make time for your people and create the space for them to learn, they will continue to just stay in the same space that they're in. So as a leader, again, creating that space of trust, creating that space of safety. And now the third piece of that is encouraging, motivating, right? Being able to say, you know what, I would love for you to take X on or Y on or Z on. And again, it's a tough position sometimes for a leader because you're making a conscious decision knowing that, and I'll use an example. I have a person X on my team, and person X is a true master of this particular thing that we need to get done, has the skill set, fully capable of doing it. They're the person that always gets these types of assignments. Then I have person Y over here, and person Y has expressed that they would love to be able to do some of these things, but they have a different background. Maybe person X has more experience than person Y. Person X overshines person Y. So person Y, therefore, doesn't have the opportunities to be able to jump in. Now, some of that's back on person Y. Person Y needs to be able to step up and acknowledge and say, I would like these opportunities, right? It has to be a bit of a self-motivated request. But it's also up to the leader to be able to say, you know what, I see potential in person Y. And maybe instead of giving this to person X's time, person Y could take a portion of it. Or person Y could partner with person X and they could learn together or share the project. Or there are different ways to be able to do that. You do a couple of things when you approach it that way. One, first off, you're creating some camaraderie on your team, which is super important for any kind of team chemistry that you're wanting to be able to drive and build that environment, right? Two, you are basically telling person X, I trust that you are so good or so involved or know this so well that I feel like you could train and teach somebody else to be able to do it. And I believe that the way that you do it is right, it's thoughtful, it's insert whatever adjectives you want there. Person Y is now hearing, okay, I'm not being overlooked. I have value. I have the possibility and capabilities to be able to bring something to the table. And my goal should be walking away from this with something new that I can add to my toolkit of my skill sets, whatever it might be. So again, perfect example of where you have just created a different type of space for your people to be able to work in. You're sharing wealth, you're sharing knowledge. There's a group of trust. There's a sense of dignity. There is a sense of value. Everybody is empathetic to each other's situations on wanting to learn versus always being seen as the rock star.
Yeah. Well, and there's a lot of growth, right, in both instances, because now person X is, you're putting them in a leadership position and helping them learn how to lead person Y through this process. And so not that they're by title their leader, but you're putting them in this influence relationship.
Well, and I think you just mentioned something interesting too, is that, I've always been a firm believer that, there are certain born leadership capabilities that exist that sometimes can't necessarily be taught 100%. However, there are individuals, I think, that if they are shown how a leader thinks through things and they take some of the situations, etc., I think that an individual can be groomed to become a leader that maybe didn't see themselves as a leader. I've seen people that they come, they clock in, they do their work. That's what they do. They clock out. And then you get them under a different leader that has them clock in and put some faith in them, gives them a couple of stretch assignments. And next thing you know, that individual has the opportunity to blossom a bit where they've been planted. Uh, Again, it's not every time. But as a leader, you have to identify some of those opportunities and at least, throw it out and see what happens because you'll never know. And when it comes to, leaders, I don't think that a leader is a title. I really honestly don't. I think
Agreed.
some of the best people that I have ever worked with in my life or have mentored me or I have had conversations with, even a coffee chat, didn't have anywhere near some of the titles that I've worked with throughout my career. And I have the utmost respect for those individuals and their thoughts and their feedback and how they show up for me authentically as themselves every single time. I know what version of them I'm going to get. So I've always said, don't be a title chaser. I mean, yes, obviously, we all want to be recognized for the work that we do and want to be valued. And I think sometimes people mistake a title for that automatically means I'm a leader. You can have a title and not be a good leader. And
Agreed.
vice versa. You can be an amazing leader and never carry a title. And so again, being authentic leadership, I think again goes back to you show up, you show up for your people, you show up for what you believe is right and the values, and you show up, and then it doesn't matter who you're talking with, partnering with, mentoring, it's the same version of you every single time. So for all of my soda lovers out there, if Coca-Cola didn't taste consistent every single time, you wouldn't trust the brand. It wouldn't be authentic, right? You have to, as a leader, show up just like that, because when I'm showing up for Alex or I'm showing up for Mariah, I'm showing up for other individuals that we get to work with. I don't want a diet version of myself when somebody expected the full version. I don't want a slightly less version of me showing up. So, authentically show up as yourself, know what your brand is going to be, is really kind of the message I'm trying to drive home there.
Yeah. And for the listener, I want you to hear this because Paul is not saying you have to be a perfect leader. He is saying show up as the same person, be authentic to yourself. Do leaders struggle? Absolutely. Do we have bad days? Absolutely. But again, comes that honest conversation. Being able to say, hey, you know what? I'm really struggling with something right now. I'm really trying my best to be authentically me. I'm really sorry. I'm having a hard day. For me, like, I respect that. I would rather you tell me that so that I know, hey, you know what? She's struggling and now it's my turn to have empathy for my leader, right?
And because what you just talked about, that's a perfect example of where that empathetic point of view, it can be reciprocated, right? And it
Yes.
only works if you have created that safe environment where that is encouraged.
Yeah.
If you know your team well enough, or you know these people that you're partnering with or working with well enough, they're going to be able to sense that something is up and something's off. But the hope would be is that you have created an environment where those individuals are going to reciprocate how you would approach them and check in on them and see them as a person, and they're going to ask some of the same questions. It's a two-way street. Leadership is a very, very reciprocated role. And again, going back to, anybody can be a leader at any given time in any given situation, pending how they approach it.
Yes. Well, I want to get to a really important piece of conversation we have had, and we've already talked about it a little bit here, and that's empathy. And I know you said I over index in empathy. So give me a brief understanding of what that means.
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, empathy is really, coming to a point where you're understanding where an individual is coming from, right? There's a difference between empathy and sympathy. Sympathy is feeling sorry, right? You sympathize with their situation, but it's different than empathy, which is you can relate to said situation, right? I over index in empathy because I've had a lot of different experiences throughout my life. I've had the blown out tire on the way to work. I've had the I missed my flight day. I've had the I wasn't able to get something done by a deadline day. And I can empathize with individuals, right? Because I can relate to that. And because, again, back to, I'm never afraid to get my hands dirty, I empathize with what it takes to get things done. That's tough sometimes as a leader who over indexes in empathy, because sometimes you are held to, we have a deadline, we have a budget, we have these
Yeah.
things, and you have to get these things done. And so a leader that over indexes in empathy will be stuck between a rock and a hard place a lot of time, where it is I want to take care of my people and I want to show them that they have value. But I'm also being held to a standard of, I've got to get these things done and I have to have them done by a certain time. And I need these individuals to perform at a certain level to be able to help me get these things done and achieve these certain goals. And it's very easy for a leader that is over empathetic to be able to not recognize where there may be a talent gap, where there might be a challenge or a risk, or an individual hasn't developed as fast as the rest of the team, even though we've taught them multiple times on different things. And they're showing up and they're trying, but it just may not be the right fit for them. Well, an over empathetic leader is going to try to give them the best benefit of a doubt to be able to help them kind of, push along and get through it, right? So I'd rather be an over empathetic leader that over indexes in the individual to be able to say, hey, maybe this isn't the right role, or maybe we need to enhance a skill set, or be able to have the tough conversation. Maybe this is just not the right thing, and we need to move you into a different place or a different way. How can I help you discover what you want to do and what you want to achieve, right? But I think a lot of leaders that are probably listening to this and have to relate with high empathy, right? It's you walk the fine line of trying to make sure people are valued, people are taken care of, you are authentic to them as much as you possibly can be, but also walking that line of making sure that you are delivering on the expectations that are required of you at your role or your position. It's hard to find that balance sometimes because you're trying to please everybody. You can't please everybody. You have to make the best decision within the moment with the information that you have based off of the experiences that you've had.
Yeah. And that, when we talked about this the other day too on the phone, and this came up for me then, and it came up for me just now too, because I feel like sometimes when you are an empathetic leader, sometimes you can borderline create enablement on accident. So where is that line between empathy and enabling someone?
Yeah, and that's a really tough line to be able to walk, because the last thing that you want to do is you don't want to be so over empathetic to a situation that you have now created an environment where there's insubordination, or there is a higher level of tolerance that isn't equated across the entire team for a given individual, right? So if you have an individual that is constantly showing up to work late every single day, and you find out that that individual has to take, a child to school first thing in the morning, or they have to do this thing or whatever that commitment is, right? In my opinion, a good leader is going to look at that situation and say, what can we do that is a natural accommodation to be able to make it work, right? Understanding the situation. And a good leader implements some things. Well, then now all of a sudden that person starts having appointments and things that they have to do at lunch. So now you're figuring out how to accommodate said thing, right? So now that becomes the norm. And so if you are over empathetic, sometimes what can happen is people can take advantage of said situation. And again, back to that balance and that line of accountability, right? It's I want to be an empathetic leader. I want to show up. I want to be here for you. I value you. But you've got to be cautious and careful of reciprocating that and not taking advantage of it. Be truthful and honest and tell me what's going on. Where are you going to be? What's happening? Because I can't help you if you're telling me one thing, but the reality is completely different. And so that line is very hard sometimes, and you've really got to watch it, because you also don't want to create an environment where person Y gets away with all of these things and gets this exception. But then you have person W and person X over here, and they're not getting any of those accommodations. They're noticing that Y is continuing to get some special treatment. And that can create an environment of distrust and potentially hostility between peers, because I don't know why they always get an exception to the rule.
Right. Yeah.
I firmly believe that people just want to show up for the most part and do the best that they possibly can. And they want to learn more things, and they want to advance, whether it be personally, professionally. And they need the help of leaders, genuine, authentic, empathetic, compassionate leaders to be able to do that.
And growth and find purpose and all of those great things.
Growth, purpose, what lights your fire, right?
That's right. Well, we are towards the end. So before I ask you the question I ask every Spark, I have another question for you, and it's a real serious one.
Okay.
Super serious. So I ask every Spark to give me a quote, a scripture, a leadership mantra, tagline, life motto. Okay. I have not yet gotten a movie quote until Paul, which I'm obsessed with, by the way. I saw it and I was like, this is amazing. So he gave me two. One was from A League of Their Own. But I want to talk about the Joe Dirt one, because I need you to describe this one to the listeners. So the quote was, "Life's a garden, dig it." Yes? Did I say that right?
Yeah. Yeah, well, anybody that has watched Joe Dirt and knows that line, it's a life's a garden, dig it, woohoo, right?
Yes.
Um, you know, and I put that one on there because first off, I love old movies, I love comedies. I don't think we laugh enough anymore. I'm not good with super formal quotes and things, but boy, I can sure quote some of the dumbest movies in
I
the entire
love it.
world. Um, but this particular one, the reason I put this on here is because in that very simple phrase from Joe Dirt, "Life's a garden, dig it." The whole premise behind that in that particular scene is about seizing the moment and making sure life doesn't pass you by, and that if you don't invest in things now, you don't plant the seeds, you're not going to be able to basically do the things that you want to do later on, right? And so investing in people now helps everybody be able to blossom and be able to kind of, grow a larger garden. I would highly recommend, and I'm still not good with it, but I'm sure trying, is learn more about your people's people. And what I mean by that is their families, the people that they see when they're not with you every single day. If you understand, on the weekend, that individual loves going to their kids' baseball games, and that is what brings them to life, and it's their family thing that they do. All you have to do is show up Monday morning and be like, how'd they do at the game? That one question will ignite an entire conversation that allows you to establish, again, that area of safety. I can talk about anything with this individual. I can come to this individual. We can have conversations about it. So, back to the Joe Dirt thing. Life's a garden, dig it. You have to take the time to invest in your people now if you want to be able to see them blossom in the future. And I will tell you, one, I think the big litmus tests to be able to understand whether you've succeeded in that will be if you've left a role or you've moved away, do the people that you used to be around every single day and you used to have conversations with, do they still try to keep in touch with you? Again, perfect examples of just where it's like you're showing up for people because at the end of the day, the things that we're working on, they come and go. Projects, deadlines, whatever it might be. But people show up for people. And that's what really truly matters. And if we're digging a life of purpose and we're creating a garden that allows us to be able to succeed and help others and be able to blossom and bloom and give back something, I think that is the true definition of what a leader should do and how a leader should show up.
Absolutely. 100% yes. I keep thinking about is you're just building relationships, right? Like we build relationships every day with people in our
We
church,
do.
with people in our neighborhoods, with
We
our
do.
friends and our family members. And so again, the people you work with, you're still building a relationship with them, and that relationship includes things outside of work.
When push comes to shove, and give or take, whatever you think will happen with the new technologies that are coming out and with advancements in AI and automation and all of these things, and you hear the panic across different industries about it's taking over my world, taking over my job, whatever it might be. At the root of every single one of those things, people have to be people and people have to be involved. There are certain things that those technologies will never be able to take away. And a perfect example of that would be a hug from a person to another person that is just having one hell of a day and they just need to know that somebody's showing up for them and cares. There is no way that that can be replicated in any way, shape, or form that is going to comfort an individual, to tell them I'm showing up for you, to tell them I believe in you, to tell them you've got this. And so again, if you over index in the people part of things, I think a lot of the other noise will go away. But you know what? What they're going to talk about is not that work at the end of the day. They're going to talk about look at some of the people that I've met along the way and the difference that they've made and the individuals that I still keep in touch with and the people that still call on me, want me as a sounding board, or the people I want to call on and I want to bounce an idea off of. That is solid gold. You can't change that. And back to your point, it is all about people. It's all about networking. It's all about relationships and how we build relationships. And I think that the individuals that will over index in people show them true compassion. They're empathetic. They build a brand that is authentic to themselves and everybody knows what they're going to get. Those are the people that will be remembered whether or not they consider them a leader or not. Again, leader is a generic term, right? It could be a mentor, it could be a motivator, it could be a trusted partner. But those characteristics, in my opinion, are the things that allow you to truly create a difference in your circle of people and your network of friends and individuals, and it sets you up for success. So Yeah.
That's awesome. I kept trying to figure out where I was going to bring this part up, but I feel like this is the appropriate time because you just named all the great things about leaders, and that person is you,
Okay.
Paul, because let me tell you, when we started thinking about our August Spark, there were a couple people that, had nominated Paul. And for me, one particular conversation, it wasn't even a conversation, it was like a passing moment that I had with you, Paul, at our 1 year birthday party. But
Okay.
it read compassion so loudly to me, and I was so grateful. I was running around like a crazy person, and you stopped me and said, "Have you eaten? Like, there's a seat next to my family. Can you just get a plate of food and eat real quick?" And I thought, you're here as our guest, but you cared in that moment enough and had enough compassion to say, "Look, I am watching you run, literally physically run around. Sit down for 10 minutes and eat a sandwich, like, please." And it was a small gesture, a small thing, but it meant a lot to me. And when I came home, I thought, that was so nice and so, I don't even have a word for it right now, but just it meant a lot to me that you took a moment to care. So thank you for that. And I know, like, later I had texted you about something, I think probably an address for a thank you note, and you said, "Did you make it home okay?" And that was just like another moment that I was just like, that if everyone could just care a little bit, like, the world would be so much better. So thank you for
Well, thank you.
showing up as the person that you were talking about today.
Well, I appreciate that because those are things I didn't even think about or recognize. So, um, but I 100% meant it, right? So, and I guess I don't even think about those things much anymore because it's just, I guess it's part of who I hope my brand is the just check in with people. Like that's it. It's not hard and it becomes a habit
Right.
when you're, truly, if you're truly ingrained with authentically caring and really wanting to just know, then it comes natural. You just check in or you have a conversation. To your point, I think if everybody just took some time just to stop and recognize others and just check in with them, see how they're doing. Again, I think that is also an example of a compassionate person. So, the situation can change, but the person and their brand, that should be authentic regardless.
And it is for you, Paul. So thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, final question. And I ask this
Okay.
of all of our sparks. If someone else is trying to figure out what their spark is, what sets their soul on fire, how do they find passion and purpose? What advice would you give them?
I mean, we need another podcast for this, so I'll try to keep it short. There have been a couple of times where throughout my professional career, I've kind of wondered the same thing of, have I done all that I can? Is this where I'm supposed to be? Does this truly align with who I am? And I think that first off, that self-reflection is healthy. Anybody that is having those conversations with themselves, it's good. That
Yes.
means that you're not satisfied and you want to do better. You want to do more. You want to contribute back something. You want to feel more valued, right? I have an exercise that I've done a couple of times in those same spots, if you will, where I want to go and what I want to do. And I've made a list, and it's kind of a three-part thing. And you can take a piece of paper and you can just fold it and trifold, right? But in one column, if you make a list of kind of like, what do you think you're good at? And then what if people told you out? You could put all of that together, right? And then the second panel on your page, you make kind of a list of what interests you. What are your interests? Do you enjoy working on the computer? Do you enjoy being outside? Do you enjoy walking dogs? And then the third one is a list of what brings you to life. And I say dig deep on this and be like, you know what? I think of 4 or 5 examples of times in your life where there was a momentary snapshot where you felt alive. The example I gave earlier on kind of the student council thing was a perfect example, right? Like I felt alive. I was in an element. I was just doing the thing. Didn't think much about it, but I remember that moment. It was a moment for me that I shared with you all. And start looking once you've made these lists, right, of the what you're interested in, what you believe you're good at, what brings you to life. And start looking for correlations across those things. And what you may find is that the thing, you may have something that you're super interested in and you're really good at it and it brings you to life. Why the heck aren't you pursuing that? I mean, if it brings you to life, it makes you feel just alive and on top of the world and you're good at it. and it interests you, like that's the perfect trifecta of something directionally you should probably at least go and explore. The first people are going to throw up their hands and be like, well, there's a monetary value and whatever it might be. I personally think that yes, you have to be cautious of the monetary value of the things. You got to do what you've got to do to be able to take care of you, your family, whoever you need to support. But there's no reason that you couldn't start a side hustle doing something that aligns with that and see where it goes and what you want to do and what it could potentially become. I'll take the student council example. What made me feel alive was it was stuff I already knew how to do and I was good at it because I'd done it before. And I felt like if nobody else is going to do it, then I could step in and just do it. And nobody was on my way, so why not? And then that ended up leading into I was interested in some of the theater productions, some of the things that were happening behind the scenes, to the point that I actually ended up later on from those experiences. We had a beauty pageant that happened every single year at our high school, and I became the primary sound and light person for it because I knew how to run all the equipment and I had the introduction to be able to do those things. And so, again, doors open when you start looking at how these things intersect, what interests you, what you're good at, what brings you to life. And you start making correlations between some of these things, and maybe, just maybe, that will help somebody be motivated in that direction to be able to at least go and explore it, at least look into it. What do you got to lose? Like, if you don't take the time to look at it now, then when are you going to?
Yeah.
And I would say that it's also okay to reflect on that every so often because, people's interests and their skill sets change as we're all exposed to different experiences and people and individuals and influencers throughout our life. But it's just an exercise that I've done before, and it has helped me find some clarity and figure out where my path is. And by no means do I have it all figured out, but it is an exercise that has helped ground me and at least help me move forward and be able to kind of figure out like what lights my spark.
Absolutely. That's great advice. And for the listener, like if you struggle with that or that's something you don't really like to do or are kind of confused on how to do it, like find someone that can help you. We have coaches at SoulFire that can help you. But your mentor, your boss, your best friend, your counselor, like there's lots of people out there and resources of people that can help you through that. So Paul, thank you so much for joining us today. I really enjoyed having you. And I feel like there might be another podcast episode in our future where we can dive into some of these things a little bit more.
Maybe we do a fun one on movie quotes and we break them down on how they
Yes.
interpret into to potential leadership skills and qualities. Yeah, I genuinely do appreciate the invite and appreciate your time and the acknowledgement of being here. And I think I just want to say to anybody that is listening to the podcast, don't wait to be labeled a leader to become a leader. Show up for somebody authentically tomorrow, tonight, tomorrow morning, whenever it might be, but just show up authentically for somebody and you automatically will be a leader in their eyes. Guarantee it.
Absolutely. Paul, where can people find you?
You can find me, the easiest way would be like on LinkedIn. That's one of the best places where I keep in touch with a lot of individuals today.
Awesome. And we'll put that in the show notes as well. For SoulFire, you can find us at thesoulfire.com and then on Facebook and LinkedIn at the SoulFire Collective and on Instagram at the SoulFire Co. Thank you again, Paul. And to the listeners, we'll see you next time. Bye, everybody.
Thanks, Alex and team. Bye.